Hello and welcome to Coding Keywords. My name is Dr. Achonu Adejo and I am the instructor for today. So this is a live session for Module 7 of our Introduction to Excel course. And I'm just going to go straight ahead and share my screen. Okay, so just to confirm that my screen is shared and is visible, and also my sound is fine. All right, so this is Introduction to Excel, and so far we have been looking at the basic things that you need to learn to master Excel, and this will help you to learn data analysis, automation, and other important applications of Excel. So we've gone to the very basics. And just a recap of our previous modules, we started by looking at the Excel interface and learning what Excel is all about and the uses of Excel. And then we went on to data entry. We saw that data is a keyword associated with Excel. And first thing we have to do is get our data into the software. And so we saw data entry, and then we looked at data formatting. So once we get our data into Excel, we have to understand the format of our data, and then we also have to ensure that Excel understands that format as well and prepares our data in the right format. And then we looked at basic calculation, and that's when we start looking at numeric type of data. And then we did cell references, which is important to know if you want to master calculations and functions. And then we did data organization. It was a very nice class. That was yesterday. And we looked at tables. We looked at tables and we looked at other aspects of data organization in Excel. We looked at sorting, filtering, freezing panes, and then we added data validation. So today we're going to be looking at the conditional and logical functions. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, and it's more like an extension of our basic calculations. So we're going to see how we do logical and conditional statements in Excel. So our model objective is to use logical tests to drive outcomes. So we're going to see how we can run tests in the course of our analysis or operation in Excel. We're going to be looking at the if, and or functions and how to use them and apply them correctly. We're going to see how to categorize and evaluate data automatically. We're going to use the COUNTIF and SUMIF for conditional analysis. And then we're going to apply conditional formatting to highlight our insights. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So first of all, we're going to look at logical thinking. Logical thinking. So I'm just going to make a quick check to be sure that the stream is fine. Okay, so logical thinking. Logical thinking. Excel evaluates conditions as true or false. So we're going to be looking at some of the keywords there. Conditions. Conditions. And it's so important that when we're doing any activity in Excel, we take note of whenever we have conditions. This is similar to when you're doing programming. Conditions are very important. You need to know when you have reached a condition in your analysis or your operation in Excel. So when there's a condition, then it's either going to be true or false. Okay, so let me give an example in everyday life. So conditions usually go with questions. Conditions usually go with questions. So I can ask a question, and I can ask a question, are you sleeping? Or is he sleeping? That's a question. And then the answer is either going to be yes or no. So if he's sleeping, I might say, don't disturb him. Or if he's not sleeping, which is the false answer, then I might say, call him for me. All right, so we see the concept of conditions here. So conditions usually go with if. The if is going to be the question that has to be evaluated to know the validity of a condition. So we're going to see it practically. So we've got logical tests to compare values using operators. So we want to check if something is equal to something, or if it's greater than something, or less than something, or greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, or not. So these are some of the logical tests. So those logical tests are applied to the questions to help test or check the condition of something. So logical results drive decisions in formulas. Wow. So lots of keywords here. So decisions are made based on the results of questions that check the condition of something. So the key thing there is decision. We want to make a decision based on something. So we got false, that means it's not true. We got true, means the condition is valid. So Excel decisions are based on conditions, not intuition. So there has to be a condition that is tested before a decision is made in Excel. So we're going to look at that, and then we're going to see how this applies to our data set. So you're working with a data set and you reach a place where you need to evaluate a condition. We're going to see how Excel gives us the if function as a powerful function to help us achieve that. So first, we're going to be looking at the if function. If so if gives us that idea that there's a question. Okay, so we see the structure of the if function. This is the structure here. So you have the if, and remember, we saw that when you're working with calculations or functions in Excel, it's usually preceded with the equal to sign. And then when it's a function, you've got the function name and then you've got the argument. So here we're saying the function name here is if. Before we use it, we have to put an equal to sign. And then we've got a logical test, and then we have the value if true and a value if false. The logical test, the value if true, and the value if false are all separated by commas. So that's just the rule to understand how to use the if function. So just a quick check in the stream to be sure everything is fine, and I encourage you to like the video, share it so that other people would see and they're not stuck again with Excel, and also write a comment, put a comment so that we can have useful feedback. All right. So we've got the logical test, we've got the result when the condition is met, and we've got the result when the condition is not met. And then we have pass or fail logic. Okay, so we've got simple grading. All right, so like in schools, you've got a score in an exam, and then the teacher wants to be able to make that decision whether the student passed or failed. So it's going to be based on the score. A check will be made, and then the results or the decision will come after that. So these are some of the applications of logical testing in everyday life. And so we're going to do our first example with our data set 7A. So I'm just going to come over here and copy 7A and then paste it here. So this is our data set 7A, and we're going to use it for activity. So now we have to add a column called results. So we're just going to come over here and add a column called results. All right, so I'm going to do something. I'm going to take the heading, move it here, and then I'm just going to make this a table. So we learned about tables in our last class. So I'm just going to make it a table. So this is a table. All right, so we've got the students, the score, and the result columns. So the students, under the student, we have the entries for all the students in the class, and then we have their scores, and then we have result here. Okay, so what are we doing? We want to use if to mark pass if the score is greater than or equal to 70 and fail otherwise. Okay, so in this result here, we're going to evaluate the scores for each student and determine whether they passed or failed. Okay, so I'm going to re-emphasize some things. First thing, first thing I want to re-emphasize is that we've got a decision to make. Very important. Whenever you reach that point in your analysis or you're working with Excel and you have a decision to make, and that's what we're talking about. Now, that decision is going to be made based on a test. So we're going to have to check something. We are going to have to ask a question. We're going to have to run a condition. We're going to have to test something logically. Based on the result of that, we're going to have our decision. So we're going to come here and I'm going to type equal to, and then I'm going to type the if function. All right, so as I'm typing it, you can see the suggestion here, and it says checks whether a condition is met and returns one value if true and another value if false. It's always going to read documentation like this, whether we're doing programming or we're working with a tool like Excel. So I'm just going to click on this, and then there you go. You see logical test, value if true, value if false. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to write the test. What is the test? What is the test? So we have a hint here. It says, if the score is greater than or equal to 70, then the student has passed. Else, the student has failed. All right, so I'm going to come over here and then I'm going to type the condition here. So to type the condition, I'm going to click on the score. So first I'm going to click on the score beside the cell where I'm entering the formula now. So this is going to apply to Alex's score, which is here. This is on M3. So this is on M3, okay, but it's referring to the score column because it's a table. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and check greater than or equal to 70. Can you see that? And then I'm going to put a comma. I have completed the question, completed the test. And then I'm going to put what's going to happen if it's true. So if it's true, then I'm going to have to write pass. All right. Now I'm working in a function. I'm writing a formula that has a function, the if function. Now, when I'm doing that, whenever I want to type a text like true, I have to put it in double quotes. So that's what I'm going to do. So I open my double quotes and then I write pass and then I close the quotes and then I put my comma and then the second option, which is value if false, is fail. So I have that there and then I close the bracket and I press enter and there you go. There you go. So you see, I've been able to populate the contents of this result column based on the condition. So you can see the condition again. We've got the if function, we've got the test or the question, we've got the result if it is true, and we've got the result if it is false. And as we can see, Alex had 78 and he passed. Bella had 92, she passed. Carlos, 65, failed. Because our condition is that 70 is what is the minimum score for a student to pass. So that's what we have there. So I encourage you to check the link in the comments. You'll be able to download the data set, and I want you to practice it until you're able to perfect the use of the if function. So that's just that, the basic use of the if function, and then copy the formula down. That's what you do if you didn't have a table, but we formatted it as a table. And so we just applied it and we just wrote the formula and then it applied automatically. All right, so let me see if I can do another example. Let me see if I can do another example. And let's say that we want to check the temperature. Okay, so let's say we have a column. So this is just a bonus example. We've got temperature, and then here we're going to check we're going to have decision here. Okay, so I'm just going to put temperature, let's say 20, and that's the assumption is degrees centigrade, and then let's say that's 20, and let's say this is 23. Okay, so now so I'm just going to say centigrade there. All right, so now what's going to be the decision? The decision is we're going to check the temperature and then we're going to make a decision based on the temperature. So I'm going to come here and put my if, and then I'm going to check. So I'm going to check if this is if it's greater than 21, then I'm going to say hot weather. Okay, so this is relative, it depends on where you live. And then else, if it's not greater than 21, then it means it's either equal to 21 or less than 21. Then I'm going to say cold weather. Now, like I said, this is relative. This is relative. Maybe you can let me know in the comment section what is more practical for your own region. So there you go. I put it down, and then you see it's cold weather because it's less than 21. And then now I'm going to drag it down, and you see hot weather. Oh, I have how there, so I have to correct it. So it's not how weather now, but hot weather. Okay, so I have to correct it and then drag it down to the right, and there you go. That's hot weather. So that's just another simple example where we see applying a logical test on data to make a decision. So that's the if function. So next up, we're going to look at nested if. Nested if. And here we have multiple conditions requiring multiple ifs. So we've got not just one question to ask now, but several questions. Okay, so let's see how that plays out. And then the order of the conditions matters. Very important. And the complexity grows quickly because we're asking several questions. We're having several ifs. And then let's see now. In this case, we're trying to take it a step further. So in the first example, dataset 7a, we just had pass or fail. It was a simple test and just the result was direct. Now, if we want to go a step further to say we have grade categories, not just pass or fail, but want to be able to say the student had an A, B, or a C or D, then we might need to use nested if because we might need several questions to ask or logical tests to check. So the key thing there is keep the logic simple and readable. Simplicity is preferred. So that's one of the best practices. All right, so now we're to add a grade column. So we're going to come over here and add a grade column. So we've done that on our data set 7a, and because it's a table, it's been extended for us, scaled up nicely. And then we're going to have to apply. Now, this is what we're going to have to apply. All right, so we're going to have different conditions to check. So first of all, if the score is greater than or equal to 90, that's an A. If it's greater than or equal to 80, it's a B. Greater than or equal to 70, that's a C. Or if it's less than 70, then it's a D. So we have to implement all these conditions and using several if statements. Okay, so let's see how we're going to do that. Let's see how we're going to do that. It's going to be like several layers. We have to be very careful as we write it. So first thing to write is the equal to sign. And then I'm going to be working in the formula bar. I'm going to be working in the formula bar, and that's because there's a bit more space there to write the function or the formula for what I'm doing. So just a quick check in the stream to be sure everything is fine. And yes, so we're back here. All right, so now I'm going to write if. So it's an if function, and I'm just going to take them step by step, step by step. So I'm going to take the first condition, and the first condition there is to check if the score, the student score, is greater than or equal to 90. So I'm going to, let me use a capital letter for the if, and then I open it, and then I'm going to check. Now, because I'm going to have several conditions, what I'm going to do is, because I know that whenever I open a bracket, I have to close it, I'm just going to close it. And then I'm just going to go back and click inside so that I don't forget to close in the end, even though that might not really matter. Okay, but now I'm going to pick the score. Excuse me. So I pick the score, and then I'm going to check if it's greater than or equal to. So that's how to write it. Greater than or equal to 90. So that's the logical test. Remember, I have logical test and then the value if true. So what's the value if true? The value if true is that I'm going to have an A. So I type that there. So I wanted the capital A. And then what's the value if false? The value if false is that I'm going to check if the score was greater than or equal to. If it's 90 and above is an A. What's the next above is a B. All right, so what's going to happen is that if the score is not greater than or equal to 90, the result, if it's false, is statement to check. So I'm going to have another if statement, and then I just type it directly there, and I close the brackets. Okay, back inside, and then I'm going back to check that same score if it's greater than or equal to 80. So you can see the levels now, and then I've got my comma, and then I put the results there. That's the B, and then I put a comma. I still have to put what's going to happen if that second if doesn't meet. So that's like another layer. So what I'm going to put next is another if statement. I open my brackets, close the brackets again so that I won't forget, and you can see what's happening. The brackets are building, showing me or giving me an idea of the if statements I've added so far, and I'm still going to go back to check the score again. This time I'm checking if it's greater than or equal to 70, and then I'm going to have a comma. If that happens, then that's a C in double quotes because it's a text. And then, yes, so at this point, I've got one more condition. I'm not going to put an if statement for that condition because if all the others are not met, then this is most likely what is the last option. So what I'm just going to put there is a D. And that D would refer to this last condition here, that the score was less than 70. So that's it here. We have this nested if here, this nice looking nested if. Remember, the reason why we have this at score here is because we're referring to a table. So we set it up as a table and it's referring to the score column. If you didn't set it up as a table, it will be referring to the cell address. And see the cell address here, this is M3. So this is M3. But because it's a table, I'm using the score column. So I just press enter and there you go, it's applied. So we can check it. 78 is a C. Let's check. Yes, that's fine. 92 is an A. Yes. 65 is a D. Yes, less than 70. 88 is a B. Yes, greater than or equal to 80. But not, yeah, greater than or equal to 80, but less than 90, and so on and so forth. So that's about the nested if. And the thing, like I said in the earlier classes, was that the more you practice, the more you would get used to it. So this is nested if, nice looking formula. And this is a bit like programming. So remember, here at Coding Keywords, we try to bridge that gap between using a tool or a software like Excel and then learning programming like Python. So this is what you will commonly see in Python, in JavaScript, in Java. You use a lot of the if statements there to test, check conditions, test, ask questions, and then make decisions. So you've got a decision to make based on a condition or based on several conditions. And that's when you use the if statements. All right. So we can also test edge values as well. We can do all kinds of tests on our data sets. Okay, so next up, we're going to look at and. All right, so we're now going to look at when we have conditions that we have to evaluate, like several conditions at the same time. Just a quick check in the stream. Yes, and to be sure that everything is fine. All right, so we're going to be looking at and. When we're using and, all conditions must be true. All conditions must be true. So we've got two conditions to test, and all of them have to be true for the results to be. Now, when we're using or, it means either of the conditions, at least one must be true or must be valid. And so that's what we mean by eligibility rules. And yes. All right, so this is going to be on our second data set. So I'm just going to select this and then insert a column so that I can have space for the second data set. All right, so just going to copy. And here we have the employee bonus eligibility. Okay, so these are data set now. Is to mark eligible. So we've got list of employees and we want to check if they're eligible for a bonus. And we're going to have to test that their sales is greater than or equal to 120,000, or their years of service is greater than or equal to 5. So that's what we're going to check. And then we're going to compare the results with exercise. Okay, so no. Okay, so we're just going to check that. All right, so now we're going to check. So here we're going to make a decision. So let me just call this eligible. Okay, so this is eligible. All right, so now I want us to do a bit of chat GPT. So I want us to do a bit of chat GPT now. So just in case, I mean, so this is just a bonus. This is a bonus like AI now. Just in case you're doing something on Excel or maybe on programming and you're stuck, you're not sure what to do or how to go about it. Now we're going to see how to use AI for that. Okay, so this is just a bonus. Okay, so this is a bonus. So I'm just going to start ChatGPT. All right. So I'm not even logged in, but we're going to see how it works. All right, so what do we have to do here? So I'm going to explain the task to ChatGPT and let's see how it's going to help. So this I'm going to write. So I'm saying, so let me be sure that, um, okay, sorry, just to be sure. Okay, just to be sure that I'm okay on the stream. Okay, fine. All right, so now this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say I am working in Excel. So that's just a bit of a background, sometimes you can just tell stories. Okay, so I'm just building the story. I'm working in Excel and I have a sales column. Okay, I have a sales column and that's column N. Okay, and years of service column and that's column O. Um, years of service column and that's column O. Okay, um, I want to make a decision on whether a staff in this employee data set is eligible eligible for eligible for what now? Bonus, okay? Bonus based on their sales and years of service. How can I do it? Okay, and then I can say the condition is that the sales should be greater than or equal to 120. So I can write it like this and ChatGPT will understand, or I can write it in words. Or years of service greater than or equal to 5. So we're doing a bonus here, which is an AI. So let me just ask ChatGPT and see. Now, got it. This is a perfect use case for an if plus or formula in Excel. So it says decide where the results will go. Very important. So we see key thing is we've got our test, we've got the decision we need to make, but then we also need to know where the result should be. So now pick a new column, for example, column P, and name it bonus eligibility. We've done something similar to that. Now use this formula, row 2 example. Now sales is in column N, and then years of service is in column O, and then we're recommended to use this formula. All right, so let me see. I'm just going to copy the code. Okay, so I'm going to copy the codes, check the string to be sure everything is fine, and then there you go. All right, so now let me paste the code here. So I paste it here, and when I've pasted the code, I'm not going to press enter. I'm going to have to cross-check with the code to be sure everything is fine. Now let's have a look at it. What we have here, we can see we have an if function, and that is straightforward logic. I mean, we have an if function there, and that's because we're making a test, a logical test, and we need to make a decision based on the results. Okay, so we've got the if function, and then that if function starts here and ends here. So that tells us that this is the result if, and then this is the result if it's false. Now, what do we have here? We now have another function called or. So because we're making a test and we're checking whether the sales is a particular amount or the years of service is a particular amount as well, we have to use the or function. So first we have the if function, which is checking the test, but that test we are checking, the question we're asking has an or. It has an or kind of condition. So we're checking whether sales is a particular amount or years of service is a particular value. So we're using an or function for that. And the or function is going to take the two things which we're checking. So first, we have N2, but we're not dealing with N2 because we start with N3. Our data set starts with N3. So I'm going to have to come here and write N3. And then I'm also going to come here and write O3. So the first part is going to check whether N3 is greater than or equal to 120,000, which is the first check. And the second part is going to check whether O3 is greater than or equal to 5, which is the second check based on the years of service. Okay, so if you look at this and you're able to get it, then you're really on track to do well on logical related tasks, whether it's in programming or here on Excel. So I press equal to, and there you go. It's eligible because if you check it, this is greater than 120,000, even though this did not meet. And then let's scroll down. And then not eligible. Bruno is not eligible. Chen is eligible. Chen met both conditions. And Diana is not eligible, did not meet any. And then Eva is not eligible as well. Okay, so that's that. So let me just go over it again. So let's have a look. It's called an if function that has an or function in it. The or function tests whether two statements, whether either of them is true. And then we now have this result for the if function, and then the result if the if function was true, and then the result if the if function was false. So keep looking at it over again, practice a number of examples, and you will get used to it. So that's the about and or. And then all right, then we've got the if error. Okay, so we also have if error. So when we're dealing with if error, we are trying to check, and then we want to make a decision to do something based on if that error, if we check if there's an error, and if there's an error, we want to make a decision. We use the if error function. All right, so let's have a look at if we want to know how a particular function is to be used. For example, the last or function, we can just type equal to and or, and there you go. You see, it's telling us checks whether any of the arguments are true and returns true or false. Okay, so I click on that and you can see it's expecting you to put all the arguments and to check. So that's one way. Assuming you want to use the AND, and I would advise you to try out this eligibility based on an AND condition, not or. Remember, we used or. So this is how to use it if we're checking with AND. It means that both conditions have to be true for the result to be considered as being true. Now let's see about if error. There you go. So can you see it? Returns value if error, if expression is an error and the value of the expression itself otherwise. So let me click on that. So can you see? It's checking for a value, and then it's allowing you to put what should happen if there's an error there. Okay, so once you know the rule, you can apply a function. So if error replaces errors with meaningful outputs. So sometimes we have our data set, and within that data set, we've got errors in some of the cells. So when we use if error, we're able to handle the occurrences of those errors by putting meaningful outputs. So we don't just have error, messing up our data. We can have a meaningful output there. So we've got an example here. So if error is going to check A1 divided by B1, so that is cell A1 divided by B1. And if it tries to do that division and there's an error, then it's just going to give not available as the result. Okay, so remember that sometimes when we have these errors in our data set, they can make our data set look not so clean. So we can use if error to handle such. All right, so we're going to do this for our next data set. So I'm just going to create space again. Insert. Remember, I'm not deleting, I'm just inserting, pushing them to the right, even though that's not really the best practice, because when you have them by the right, then if you delete a row, it can be affected. All right, so let's go for our next data set. So, okay, I'm not sure if this is going to work out for us, but let me just copy it. If it doesn't work, then I just create something. Okay. All right, yes, I think this is what we're working with. All right, so here we're to create a column dividing revenue by units sold. Revenue divided by units sold. So I'm going to come here and I'm just going to call this new column. So what we're going to do is equal to, this is the first revenue here, which is O2, and then we're dividing it by units sold. And I press equal to. So that's what we have here. And then let me just apply it down. All right, so Now, force an error by clearing a unit sold cell. Okay, so I'm just going to come over here. Now, it's going to be an error because I'm doing revenue divided by units sold. And remember, when you have 0 in the denominator, you likely have an error. So let me just come over here, pick this one, and then I'm just going to delete it. And can you see I have a divide by 0 error there? I have a divide by 0 error here. It's not making my data set look so nice. So now I'm going to use if error. So now let's just let me call this an if error column here. So remember, I didn't put equal to sign, so it can appear there as a text. And here I'm going to put equal to if error. And as you can see, it's expecting me to have the value. And what's my value going to be? My value is going to be revenue divided by units sold. And then I put a comma. And then what's going to happen if there's an error? I'm going to write not applicable. That's what's going to happen. And then we'll see what happens. Okay, so what happens is going to evaluate the formula, and then it's going to be checking out for errors. And yes, it spotted the error here, and then we have not applicable. This is really nice. So we see this is better. It's better representation than this. All right, so now we've seen the if error, and as we keep practicing, we're going to master it. So next up, we're going to see count if, which is going to count based on the condition. And we're also going to see sum if as well. Okay, so what happens is that we want to, so we've got a data set and we've got items in our data set, and we want to count based on the condition. So we want to test and then count based on the items in that data set that met the condition. All right, and then sum if is when we're summing based on a condition. Now this is very helpful. Now this is the structure of the count if function. Count if, so it kind of combines counting operation and if. Okay, so remember we said if is when you've got a test to make and a decision to make, to a test to check, and then a decision to make based on the result of that test. So now we are going to count based on the results. So if it's true, if the test returns true, then we count. So that's count if. It counts the number of cells within a range that meets the given condition. Okay, so that is the sum if. Okay, the count if, sorry, and then we got the sum if where we have a range and criteria, and then okay, so let's see the sum if. With the sum if here, we add the cell specified by a given condition or criteria. So we're going to sum or add based on the given condition or criteria. Okay, so we have this example here, greater than or equal to 100. And then, okay, so we got an example here, and then we're going to see how that works. Okay, so we're using data set 7C, and we want to count how many laptop sales records exist. All right, so yes, so we're still on this 7C. Now we want to count how many laptop sales records exist. So I'm going to come over here, and then I'm just going to say count laptop. And then I'm going to come here, and then because it's count if, it's going to give us just one result. So we don't need to have a result for each row because it's counting across to give us one result. So we want to count how many laptop sales records exist. How many laptop sales records exist? All right. So what are we going to do? What we're going to do is products column, and we're going to use a count if to check if we can see laptop there. So I'm going to write count if, okay, and count if is going to consider the range and then the criteria. So now what's the range? The range is going to be from here, which is L2 all the way down. So I can select it like this, and you can see it's L2 colon L6. So that's the range, it's highlighted. And I put my comma, and what's my criteria? I'm checking that there is laptop in the product list there. So I just write it in double quotes. Very important. It always has to be in double quotes if we're trying to use a text within a function. And there you go. So you see it's 3. It's 3 there. Okay, so it gives us the result as 3. Count sales records in Europe. All right, count Europe. So in this case, I'm going to use a count if, and then I'm going to come over to select the range on the region. I put a comma, and then I'm going to write Europe in double quotes. Now let's just say I didn't write Europe in double quotes. Just wrote Europe. Let's see what happens. Oh, it gives me zero. You see, it gives me zero because it didn't properly see it as a text. So I have to write it in double quotes, and then it's giving me two. Okay. Count records with units sold greater than 100. Units greater than or equal to 100. Okay, so I'm going to come here and then equal to count if, and then I'm selecting the range units sold, and then I have my comma, and here I'm going to put greater than or equal to 100. Now I don't write this in quotes because I'm dealing with numeric computation here. And then okay, okay, so it says there's a problem with this formula, not trying to type. Okay, when the first character is an equal sign, Excel thinks is the formula. I type 1 plus 1, okay, 2 to get this. Okay, so we have, so let's see what happens here. All right. Okay, so it seems, okay, so probably I have to add the code. So let me see if I should add the codes around, sorry, not that. Um, okay, so let me see. Oh, all right. So whichever case, okay, so let's say equal to count if, yeah, and then for the criteria, I have to put it in quotes. So that's what it means. Okay. So I put the criteria in quotes, whether it's numeric or not. All right. So just to revise it again, you can see the greater than or equal to 100 was placed in quotes. All right. Calculate total revenue for laptop only. Total revenue for laptop only. Calculate total revenue for Europe. Calculate total revenue for units. So I'm going to do this first one. Calculate total revenue for laptop only. And this is where your logic is going to be tested a bit. Okay, says calculate revenue for laptop. Now, let's look at it. To calculate the revenue for laptop, it means that we have to check. We have to check that a particular entry in the row is a laptop. And if it's a laptop, then we're going to add up the revenue. So how are we going to do it? Can we use the sum if? Can we use the sum if? So let's see if we can use the sum if. All right, so we're going to come here and type sum if and then click on this. Okay, so sum if is going to check the range. And then we also got criteria. Then we've got sum range. Range, criteria, sum range. So assuming you've not used the sum if before, you can go to ChatGPT, get some tips, you know, or you can just inspect it and try. So let's try. Sum if, what will be the range? The first range is where we're trying to sum. In that case, I'm just going to add the revenue there. Remember, that's what we want to sum. Then I've got a comma. Now, what's the criteria? Criteria is that, okay, the first range is not the sum range. The first range is going to be the range for the criteria. So I'm going to highlight that. That's laptop. Then I put a comma. Now, what's the criteria? Criteria is that it's laptop, right? And then next up is the sum range, which is the revenue. I highlight that. And then there you go. Can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that? So it's like two layers. We just follow the formula and Excel gave us the guide. First range is the range for the criteria. We're checking the product to be sure it's laptop. Second one is the criteria, which we write laptop in double quotes. And finally, we have the sum range, which we put there as well. So I would like to encourage you to, okay, let me do, okay, I want you to do this one, total revenue for Europe. And then let me do this total revenue for units sold. Okay, calculate revenue, units sold greater than or equal to 100. Okay, so let's attempt it. Come over here. Equal to sum if, and then what's the range down? The range for the criteria is that the units sold should be greater than or equal to 100. So this is the range. Okay, and then what's the criteria? I'm going to put greater than or equal to 100. I put it in double quotes. Remember, we saw that the last time. And once the sum range is the revenue. So I select the revenue, close, and there you go. So you can verify it later. And I want you to try this one, which is to calculate total revenue for Europe. So that's the sum if and the count if. Okay. And we've seen how this helps us do quick computations based on decisions that are also derived after logical tests were done. All right, so conditional formatting, some of the insights now. Visual rules highlight patterns. We've done conditional formatting before. We did it in the previous class where we're able to check our data sets for certain conditions and we formatted it accordingly. So that was like a bonus. So we format based on conditions. We can highlight values above an average. We can use color scales. We can use data bars. So let's highlight scores below 70 in red. Okay, so what's going to happen is that we're going to go back to our original data sets. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to come here and I'm going to hide. I don't want to delete, so I'm hiding it. So we have it here. So all the scores below 70, we want to, excuse me, highlight them in red. Okay, so we can also highlight top performing sales. So if you had gone through the previous module, which is module 6, you should be able to do this. So let's just come over here and then select this. We want to highlight the scores. Okay, so the scores that are below 70, we want to highlight them in red. So I select this and I come to conditional formatting. I go to highlight cell rows and I click on less than. Okay, and then I'm going to say those below 70. So I'm going to type 70 there. Cells are less than 70 should be in red. And there you go. So this is conditional formatting. It picked 65 and 59. So that's conditional formatting. And here for our sales, we can highlight top performing sales. Okay. So okay, we hit it. We hit the column there. So now let me do Control Z so that we can have our data back. Okay. So now we come over here, top performing sales. All right. So now I'm going to hide data set 7C because we're dealing with this data set here. So top performing sales, we want to highlight the top performing sales. All right, so you can come over here, click on the sales, go to conditional formatting, and let's say top. Okay, so top bottom rows is probably what we use here. So let's say we want to take the top 10%. Okay, so the top 10%, and let's top 10% is just returning one. So let me just say I want to go with um, okay, so that's quite a large value. All right, so when I get to like top 50%, it's highlighting two. So I can highlight the top 50 using, let's say, green. Okay, or I can use yellow, or I can do custom formatting. So it's also good to be inquisitive and play around with these things. So can you see what we've done? We've taken this data set and highlighted the top 50% performing sales in yellow. So that's conditional formatting. It checked, it tested for top 50%, and then it applied a style on it. So we see the difference between the if function and the conditional formatting. Here, we're just concerned about the style. We want the visual representation of the results of a test, whereas in if, it's kind of maybe more technical. All right, and then we can also apply data bars to our revenue. Okay, so I'm going to do a Control Z again so that I can have my data sets back. Okay, so these are data sets, and then we want to do a visual representation of our revenue, and that's going to be using data bars. So I select this revenue cell here, and I come to conditional formatting, and then you've got data bars there, and then let me just use you can use the gradient fill or the solid fill. So let me just use solid fill, and then let me use blue, and there you go. So we have a representation of the different quantities of our revenue in a colored style based on their values. So we see the biggest amount there is the first one, 108,000. You see it's filled up, and the other ones are put as percentages of that one. So we can see that. We can look at it visually and see which of our revenue was the highest. And then we can also change the styling of our text as well. So that's that about conditional formatting. And that brings us to the end. Okay, so we're just going to wrap up some of the common errors to avoid. Incorrect logical operators, very, very important. We should ensure that we stick to the correct operator. So if it's a greater than, if it's a less than, we should stick to that. We should cross-check it. Wrong condition order in nested if. That's also another issue. Mixing text and numbers in criteria. Forgetting absolute references in criteria ranges. Yeah, so sometimes we need to use absolute references. I remember we've looked at references, cell references in module. Um, that should be last two modules. And then, so this is a recap. So we've looked at logical thinking in Excel. We've looked at the if function, the nested if. We've looked at how to use the and or functions. We looked at if error function, the count if function, sum if function, and we looked at conditional formatting. And next up, we're going to be looking at dates and text in Excel. So I'd like to thank you and appreciate you for joining this live session on logical and conditional functions in Excel. I'm still Dr. Achuno Adejo, and I want you to like this video. I want you to share it, and I want your comments. This is very, very necessary to get this video, which is helpful to many people who need to use it. So what we're trying to tell you in coding keywords is that Excel is not supposed to be a pain. It's not supposed to be a headache. It's supposed to be fun. And that's why we use our keyword technique to explain it to you in a way that you should understand. So we break it down, we introduce the concepts, in a way that you can really pick it and use Excel. Excel is a very useful tool for many professionals and also even in personal life. And it's interesting. So one thing you get to see is that as you keep learning Excel, you get to learn a lot of stuff. This builds your critical reasoning, your logical reasoning, your critical thinking, logical reasoning, analytical mind. You get to see that this helps you, better at, handling logical stuff, even in your maths and all of that. So it's helpful for you to learn how to use Excel. Yes, even though we know we have AI tools that we can push these questions to and they can give us back the results. And today we also saw, like a bonus, we saw how to mix, or to use AI to assist you when you're learning. Okay, so we saw how to write prompts. So we wrote the prompt in ChatGPT. We had an issue, we wrote the prompt and we got the results. So so it's helpful to know how to use AI as well, but it's also helpful to understand the tool. All right. And there are many applications of Excel. You can use Excel for data analysis. And one of our previous videos, we showed that we all do data analysis. We can't run away from it. We can't avoid it. So knowing how to use Excel, knowing how to do data analysis will make us make better informed decisions in our place of work. So we're here at Coding Keywords, and here we break down the concepts of tech to help you transition into tech easily, okay, in a fun way. So we have videos on Excel, videos on data analysis, videos on Python, and more are coming up. We're going to have videos on Canva, videos on machine learning, so just to create a platform, kind of like an academy where you can come and find your pathway in tech. I want you also to connect with us. We have several other connection platforms beyond YouTube. So we have WhatsApp channel, we have the Telegram channel, and we have other platforms of engagement beyond YouTube where you can engage with us, and get more tips, more materials, more training on how to do much, much better in tech. So the Excel file used with examples used for today's activity will be available in the link. So just check the link in the comment section, get the files, get the data sets, practice it, work with it, because practice makes perfect. And I want to see you in the next live session. So watch out, subscribe so that you get notified when we have our next live session where we'll be dealing with dates and Excel. That will be our module 8. Remember, it's a free 10 module introduction to Excel course. And I trust you've been having a wonderful time learning with us. Looking forward to seeing your comments. Bye, and see you in the next video.